All right. Hello, and welcome to this month's Carteret Series webinar hosted by the Georgia Library Association. I'm Michelle Lee from Kennesaw State University, and I'm the voice of Carteret. My fellow hosts are Ashley Dupuy from Kennesaw State University and Emily Williams from Georgia State University. And this month's webinar is co-sponsored by the Georgia Library Association's Black Caucus Interest Group. This webinar series highlights trends, innovations, and best practices in libraries. Registration is free and open to anyone, anywhere. Topics are chosen to be of interest to employees of all library types, and each session is approved for one Georgia Continuing Education hour. If you have an idea for a topic or presenter for future webinars, please let us know. You can share your ideas with us using the email address at the bottom of this slide. The Carteret Series webinars are sponsored by the Georgia Library Association. If you live in Georgia but aren't a member, we strongly encourage you to join GLA. Your membership shows much appreciated support for these webinars and for the Georgia library community as a whole. If you live outside of Georgia and would like to support the Carteret Series webinars, you can make a donation to the Georgia Library Association on the GLA website or by scanning the QR code on the screen. Your donations help us continue to provide free professional development opportunities like this to library workers in Georgia and beyond. Now, before I introduce you to our presenter, I'd like to tell you a few technical things. First, we have disabled the microphone, hand raising, and Q&A tools, so please type your questions into the chat box. We will note them and include them in our Q&A session with the panelists at the end of the presentation. This session is approved for one Georgia Continuing Education hour. The email that you receive one day after the webinar will include a link to a PDF that will serve as your attendance certificate. We can only give certificates for viewing the live webinar, not for viewing the recording. And we are recording the session, and the recording will be available on our website later in the week. If at any point you lose audio, either log out and log back in again, or check your audio settings at the bottom left corner of your Zoom screen and test your speaker. And also check our troubleshooting document that's linked in the chat, and you can briefly see the link here on this slide. And if you'd like to enable closed captioning for this webinar, click on the Show Captions button on the bottom of the screen. And finally, we recommend using a wired internet connection. Now, let's get started with our brief introduction before I transfer things over to our presenter. So, Rodney Freeman is the visionary behind Are You a Librarian? The Untold Story of Black Librarians, and serves as the director and producer of the documentary. As a digital production librarian and archivist at UNC Charlotte's J. Murray Atkins Library, Rodney has dedicated over 15 years to preserving underrepresented narratives and championing, I can pronounce that, intellectual freedom. Through his work with the Reminisce Preservation LLC, he has skillfully merged archival research with compelling storytelling to document the historical contributions and contemporary struggles of Black librarians. His passion for social justice and expertise in digital media have made him a leading voice in the movement to ensure that the legacy of Black librarianship is both recognized and celebrated. And now, preserving legacy, inspiring change, the untold story of Black librarians. Rodney, take it away.
All right. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for having me here and inviting me to just share this story with you. I am Rodney Freeman, and I have been in the library world for about roughly, about 15, 16 years, give or take. I started off as a page and worked my way up to becoming well, I actually started off as a cataloger and then became a branch manager and worked my way up to becoming an administrator, and then eventually becoming a library director. And now I am here as a digital production librarian, doing my job in Charlotte, but really have this passion for this documentary that we're producing. And I'll introduce my team in a minute, but just how I came about this, right? Um, it was a long road. I tell a lot of people that the first thing that I remember in library school about hearing about Black librarians or segregated libraries was that one day it was segregated, the next day it wasn't. And that was it. That was it. How they got started, what happened, the context in between, who championed the cause of desegregation. None of it. I had never heard this story, and actually, to be honest with you, I learned a lot about the story of segregated libraries and Black librarianship while doing this documentary. And I've been in this field for what did I say, about 15, 16, 17 years. So, it's fascinating that this story is coming out now, also dealing with some of the stuff that we're dealing with right now about erasure and, censorship and intellectual freedom. So I'm just honored that I'm able to tell this story. And I really want to give big up to all the people, the researchers that wrote it down, the Black librarians that preserved it, the Black collectors, because without those archives, without, that paper trail, I wouldn't be able to do this. So I want to make sure that, I honor them by, saying that, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be able to do this. So I do want to say that before we get into the story, and I'll move to the next slide. You see this is where I used to work. I was a library director at Riviera Beach, Florida. We did this beautiful renovation of this building that was an office space, and we turned it into a library. And that actually prompted me to say I quit. Believe it or not, I was in the field. I felt I was overwhelmed, and I just I didn't really see myself in this field anymore. I mean, I saw it as a job, something that I came in to get a check, but also I wasn't, I don't know, I wasn't feeling it like I did when I first got into librarianship, like that curiosity and wanted to explore things. And it just, for some reason, maybe because I was in management, I don't know. But I was just like, you know what, I'm going to quit. I'm going to go do something else. And lo and behold, I started these databases, Black Male Archives, where we capture, curate, promote positive stories about Black men, the sister platform, Powerful Women of Color. And I actually went to an ALA conference, um, and I was presenting the database to some others, and I saw this group of Black men kind of just standing off to the side, just really, but they were passionate because they were telling stories about their libraries. Some of them were directors, some of them were children's librarian, and they were talking about what they were doing for the community. And I was like, man, who's going to tell that story? You know, I didn't really see Black librarians being depicted in the media. I think there's a little bit more today than it was before. But every time people would talk about a librarian, it didn't look like me. It didn't look like them. And I wanted to make sure that whoever told this story, because at that time I didn't know I was going to be telling this story. Whoever told that story was a person that, shared their experience. And we took a picture together. I posted that online, and somebody said, you know what? This would be a documentary. And I was like, what? Really? Yeah, it'll be a documentary. So I was like, well, I don't know how to do a documentary because I'm a librarian. Like, I know how to do some research for a documentary, but I'm not a filmmaker. So lo and behold, I did seek out a couple people. The first couple of people fell through. And then I met one of my teammates that I'll introduce you to, and we took it from there. So I kind of want to show you. So once we got started, we started doing some what we call pre-interviews to see who we would talk to, if the people that we're talking to can talk about some of the themes that we wanted to cover. And the one question that we ask everybody out of the pre-interviews is like, what does it mean to be a Black librarian? And so I kind of want to show you a clip of that we kind of strung together for you. So here it is right here.
when I think about what it means to be a Black librarian, is what does it mean to show up, to represent that we have a place in these institutions. And we know that there are students in those institutions who are struggling and need to see people.
I think you stopped. Here we go. Sorry.
When I think about what it means to be a Black librarian, is what does it mean to show up, to represent that we have a place in these institutions. And we know that there are students in those institutions who are struggling and need to see people who look like us and who understand what they're going through, their experience. And that also goes for the faculty and staff in those institutions, because often they're also kind of struggling to find their place in those institutions. So that's what stands out to me.
It was interesting. Like, I wanted to be a librarian, but I didn't have any like role models in elementary school or high school. I just, so interesting. I even thought it was a path for me.
Because it's a profession that is overwhelmingly white and overwhelmingly female, that it's really important that we have a say in the types of books that our libraries carry. Again, the types of resources that we're able to offer. And quite frankly, no one can tell our story but us. No one can articulate some of the things that are important to us but us. Now, we can have allies and we can have folks that understand some of our community issues and some of the things that we want to address and some of the things that we want to see in terms of access to services and resources, but no one is better suited or better positioned to do that for us than us. And so it's important that we're in these spaces, and it's important that we understand library and information services as a career path and what that entails.
Being a Black librarian is somewhat of a challenge. Having been in the business for 30 plus years, I think the idea of when you interact with library customers, library patrons, do they see you as staff first or as a Black librarian first? So I think that's one of the things that we're always, or that I'm always facing. I think the other thing regarding being a Black librarian, and I don't go around saying, hey, I'm Black and I'm proud because I'm a Black librarian, but the idea of making sure that, again, access to the resources of the library are there for everyone. And so more so, my job as a Black librarian is making sure that people of color, all colors, therefore all human beings, are welcome in the library, that we provide the same level of customer service to them, and we let them know about all of the resources, from our staff knowledge of the collection to their knowledge of the community.
It means oftentimes you won't see a lot of people that look like you in the field. So you kind of have to go to conferences or seek out other organizations and other types of agencies to kind of find people that look like you. But I think it's important to also be in that space, even though it may not be a lot of us. So the people that we're helping can see that there are people like us that look like them that can help them out.
It means that there's a community that you can engage with, but it also means that you face a lot of uphill struggles of misunderstandings and just working extra hard to succeed.
Oh, it means that you have to work twice as hard as your non-minority counterparts. It means that you have a camaraderie with people like yourselves. We kind of really look out for each other and we really try to take care of each other. But I can be honest to say it is a struggle. It's a struggle that people will respect you to get the same amount of respect that others are in the field that are a different color.
Oh, I think it means to be an anomaly a little bit, maybe to be an enigma, but it also means that you will be challenged and tested, and you really, I believe, have to have a good amount of fortitude to continue on in this profession. It still has a ways to go as far as race relations are concerned, but there's so much, right? So we can, like this big life cycle of information that librarians control, and it's really controlled by like a subset of the population. And I think we really need to continue to do. I know we're all doing things, trying to recruit and promote and see what we can do about retention, but it's just not enough. And so it continues to be, to me, for me, a trying profession, one that really tests some levels of perseverance for me.
That to be a Black librarian is to hopefully be somebody who can inform these libraries on the issues that Black people face and the needs that Black people have. And then we can tailor our services, collections, and other things to serving our Black populations.
To be an effective Black librarian, it means to advocate and represent our communities, the communities that we serve, and the communities that we represent, to advocate for programs, for books, for audio books, databases, you name it.
There's a value in having Black librarians a part of your library. That's what I would say.
To me, it means that it's me being a role model and showing especially Black and brown people that they have access to everything everyone else does.
We not only know how to recommend and give advice on what to read, but we know how to catalog. We know how to select materials. We know how to create book lists that are relevant to our community. We know how to program. We know how to put together these great programs. We know how to survey our community and find out the things that are meaningful to them. But we are also able to do that from a cultural standpoint as Black people in this community. And oftentimes we get overlooked in that arena.
And so I think that I don't always walk around thinking about being a Black librarian, and I certainly don't operate from the idea that because I'm a Black librarian, I have to make sure that everything I do is quote unquote related to my culture. But I do believe that I need to represent, as a Black male librarian, the idea of someone who is capable and able to help others use those resources and to make sure and pave a way that there is no question about what we're doing and who we're doing it for, and that's everybody.
Really being able to open up a different world for some people, because so often our life is really restricted by what we see around us, and I think the access to information is something that can free everyone.
I think being a Black librarian in this society, in this country, means that we have made it and that we are of value in this profession.
All right. So we interviewed to date, we have interviewed around 100 and maybe 170 people. Now that is including not just in person, that is in person, some of our pre-interviews, some of our one-off interviews, and and our YouTube interviews on our YouTube channel. So yeah, we were basically in this mode of going out and recruiting, and then we got a call from Good Morning America to be featured on their GMA3 segment about Are You a Librarian? So I kind of want to show you a clip of that, and then I'll get into the team and some of the background stuff about the documentary.
Now, with the story hidden amongst the bookshelves, librarian Rodney Freeman is making it his mission to tell the untold stories of fellow Black librarians then and now. His upcoming documentary shedding light on a history of struggles and why these Black librarians matter.
Being a Black librarian means that, you do have an additional responsibility to to make sure that everyone is truly represented in the library.
Black librarianship is about bringing equity, bringing ourselves to our work so that it's not monolithic.
I knew that there were a lot of Black librarians going through some of the same stuff that I went through, if not even more.
This documentary really does trace the history of Black librarianship all across the country, and it also really speaks to the people who are doing the work today.
When I did my research with young Black males, one of the things that they said was, if I would have had a Black librarian, I probably would have read more.
I think the library profession is better than it was, but we are still limited in people of color. I'm the first African-American woman to run a presidential library. It's an honor, but it's also really shocking.
We're not just telling our stories. We're telling the stories of those who come before us. You have to see someone in the position in which you want to be in order to even phantom being in that position. I tell the story all the time about Dr. Carla Hayden and what her as the Librarian of Congress means to me. As soon as she became Librarian of Congress, that little girl in me, it was almost like a healing.
To hear the experiences of some of the people that we've interviewed for this documentary has been amazing. I've learned so much just about the history of librarianship. We're going to find a way to make sure that we preserve Black history, preserve our culture, so we can pass it down for future generations, because it's important and it's American history.
Black librarianship means to me, it's my existence.
The library is open for everyone, and that is truly what it means to be a Black librarian. We want to represent everyone.
I say it all the time, representation matters.
Yes,
and
now with the story.
All right, so this brings us to our first poll. When did you first learn about E.J. Josie? And I think we'll give you guys a couple of minutes and then we'll move to the next.
Be another 30 seconds.
Okay. All right, so we got the poll results in, and I'll go ahead and kind of jot down the line. It says 1% said before college, 19% during library school, okay. 17% while working in the profession, and 63% not at all. Okay. Okay. So, yeah. So that is basically in why is E.J. Josie important? Well, I thought you would never ask. So I want to go to the next slide, which I'm going to have to stop this because I have an exclusive clip that, unfortunately, because we want to make sure that people see the documentary, we are trying to reduce the amount of clips that we have. We are currently at 2 hours and 18 minutes, and our goal is to be between 1:30 and 2 hours. So unfortunately, this clip that I'm going to show you did not make the cut. Does not mean that we don't talk about E.J. Josie. It's just we had several clips that we felt like could, we had some great B-roll to go with it. But this clip is very important that I'm going to show you. So I want to go ahead and move to that next clip. Actually, let me move this slide. So I'm going to stop this here, and I'm going to open up what we're using to actually built the documentary. It's called Premiere Pro. And so you'll see this screen, and I'm going to play just a maybe 2-minute clip so you guys can get kind of get acquainted with who E.J. Josie was. The person that you'll see in the interview is Dr. Wayne Wiggin, and he is a historian on librarianship. He wrote the book, one of the resources that I use to really help tell this story. So he is a main person in our, especially our history part arc of the documentary, making sure that we get the story straight when it comes to history. So I just want you to hear from him who E.J. Josie was.
E.J. Josie was probably the most vocal of the pioneers. He was born and raised in the Deep South, South Carolina. He became director of the Savannah State University, historically black college and university. And in that position began taking leadership roles in the American Library Association. There's one, the American Library Association made a rule in the 1950s that it would accept as a representative of every state only one library association, one state library association in the American Library Association. At the time, North Carolina, for example, had a North Carolina Negro Library Association and a North Carolina Library Association. And North Carolina combined in order to retain its membership as a single state library institution. But a variety of institutions did not, including Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, and Georgia, and South Carolina, for example. So Josie, knowing that situation existed, protested in 1963, I believe, against the Mississippi Library Association Journal receiving an award for publishing a good library journal. He said, how can you do this when I can't even join the Mississippi Library Association? Virginia Lacey Jones at the same time could not be, as Dean of the Library, School of Library Service at Atlanta University, could not join the Georgia Library Association, which it refused to integrate until, I believe, 1965. Rather, every time she sent her check in for membership, she'd get a letter back saying, your membership application is being tabled. They wouldn't say it's rejected, and they wouldn't accept it. They tabled it, which meant pushing the can down the road again. So E.J. Josie, certainly Virginia Lacey Jones.
All right, so back into the presentation, and I just wanted to share that with you. It was some really good history in there about E.J. Josie and who he was, and that is really what I was able to really sit down with. We sit down with around um, maybe I think between 41 to about 46 participants in person. We went to New York, we have gone to California, we Georgia, we've been to Texas, North Carolina, Ohio, Chicago. We've we've been around. So actually this May, right now, it has been 2 years since we first started this project. And the person that I was telling you about, and the guy that you saw in the clip that was filming the book, that's Byron Williams. He is our videographer, director of photography. He is amazing, helping us with the editing part, helping us with the filming. All of us, just FYI, all of us that are doing, we have day jobs. So this is something that we're doing outside of our day job. So Asia Harris is an independent filmmaker. She's helping us making sure that we had a script tight. Kennedy Brooks, who was my researcher, she has since graduated college and has moved to DC, and she's doing some good stuff up there. She was interning with the Library of Congress until recently. I don't know if she still is. But she did a lot of the research of pulling some of the photos and the archives and projects that that's actually tied to this, which I'm going to tell you guys about in a little bit. She helped a lot with that research too. Adriana and Angel are two consultants helping us out. They're librarians and archivists, and of course myself on here. So So yeah, we have gone to a number of places. We had to write the script. We had to do the pre-interviews. We built a website. We have, man, I can't really tell you how many hours of footage we have, like B-roll and interviews. And that is one of the things that we have noticed too. We want to make sure that even though we're not able to put everyone that we've interviewed in here, we do want to make sure that there's an option out there once we get this first cut up and running, that you guys will be able to see some of the interviewers that didn't, for whatever reason, make the cut. And it's not because it was bad; it was just a simple fact that we had to, it's documentaries are really a bunch of sound bites, and we had to pick the right one to match the theme. And so, but there are a lot of great interviews on YouTube, the ones that we weren't able to put into the documentary. So we're building a database where people will be able to access those. So that is something that we are making sure that, people will be able to go online. So you want to hear from, like, we actually interviewed Cindy from the IMLS, and you want to hear her story. We want to make sure that you're able to access that full oral history, because I don't we when we were sitting around thinking about it, there hasn't been a project like this, really, a oral history project that is really documenting the lives of and stories of Black librarians, that I can think of offhand. So yeah, post production, we're actually in the editing phase right now as we speak. At 5 o'clock today, me and Byron are going to be in in my office doing some editing, and we're going to make sure that we get it down. Like I said, we're at 2 hours and 18 minutes right now. We need to be at between hour and 30 and 2 hours. We want to make sure that we get the word out. So what we're doing, we're doing a little bit different from some of the other documentaries that are out there. We are going to be doing our first cut premiere at ALA, and I have a slide that shows you all the activities. So we'll talk about that again. But we're going to be doing our first cut premiere at ALA. Right after that, we're going to be taking this on the road, really, to do screenings so we can continue to. It's one of the things that I learned about was what do they call it? Um, uh, where you're learning and you're kind of revamping as you go all the time. And I always have the name, but I can't think of it right now. It's like at the tip of my tongue, and if somebody said it, I'll probably be like, yeah, that's it. But basically, you put something out there and you kind of tweak it as you go a little bit, right? And so that's what we're doing. We're going to do some screenings right after that until the rest of this year. So we're still going to be doing screenings and the editing phase, but next year we want to start putting this thing into festivals. We also want to take the rest of this year to make sure that we have any licensing that we need to, shore up or or pay for continue, because this is on a shoestring budget. This is really from, we started a GoFundMe, so all the supporters that have been donating, all the people who just, called me up and say, hey, what you need? I've been putting out of my pocket. Byron, the whole team has been putting out their pocket. So we're just trying to make sure that we can get this up and people, are able to see this and hear this story. So that's where our, like, marketing focus group. So next slide, currently in the editing phase, we've been doing some presentations and talking to people. Again, like I said, July we'll start the focus groups and screenings. First cut in Philadelphia. We're also working on a couple of projects. So we're going to do a spin-off working with building a nonprofit. And basically that mission is to collect stories of marginalized communities, and not just here in America. We want to go global with it. So that is something that we've been working on. Also, we have we wrote two grants to the IMLS recently, and we have not heard back from the IMLS about those grants. Unfortunately, with the situation that it is, we might not hear back. The one of the grant was to build an ArcGIS map of all colored and segregated libraries, which we actually have started. Kennedy, my researchers that I was telling you about, I can show you some of the beginning works of it, but if we were able to get that grant, we're going to also go out and get oral histories and working with Tracy Hall and going out there and get oral histories of people's stories and being able to produce a story map and an ArcGIS map of all these colored and segregated libraries. So yeah, so we'll see what will happen with that. And then the other thing was a Black Librarians curriculum that we wanted to basically, go to after school programs and schools with and talk to them about like Black librarianship, how Black librarianship, started, with Black collectors and anti-literacy laws and resistance and using literature and literacy as a tool of resistance to enslavement, white supremacy, you name it. The courts, Thurgood Marshall, some of his first court cases, guess what, were to defend people who went into segregated libraries and did read-ins. So yeah, so it's a lot of history there that we want to make sure that this documentary, I am not the one. Please, don't think that this is going to be the end all be all with, just in this one documentary. There's a ton of stories that we are not able to tell just in that, 1 hour and 32 hour time span. So I just wanted this to be a start for people, get people's minds racing and like, oh yeah, you know how you go down that rabbit hole sometimes you're sitting there watching something and you're like, wait a minute, let me get my phone out and start Googling stuff and you just start going down a rabbit hole. We kind of want you to do that with us. That's what this is for, is really to get you started. Um, but yeah, I did want to show you the map, so I'm going to stop this again and I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna share this map with you. All right. And, oh, let's see. Let's see. Here we go. And let me see. I'm sorry, just had to pull it up real quick. Here you go. Okay, so on this map, and I'm not going to take too much of the mess because this is really, really a rough start. We kind of just want to put some data on the map just to see kind of where what it was looking like. But you can kind of get a sense of what we're trying to map: branches, college, HBCU, faith cabin libraries in South Carolina, freedom libraries that we'll talk about, independent libraries, Black libraries that had a Black board and a Black library director back in the day, municipal libraries, private, public, and school. So, yeah, we're still working on this. I just wanted to kind of share that with you. Back to the presentation. So, next thing on here. So yeah, so what's some of the content that we'll talk about? Anti-literacy law, Black codes, right? Those are the things that prevented slaves from being able to read and learn how to write. Oh man, let me tell you, there's so much research that I did with this, reading books that actually didn't have to do with libraries. Reading books just basically about slavery and how slaves would learn how to read and write and or couldn't write because of, some of their enslavers thinking that if they were able to write a pass, they can, set themselves free. So it's anti-literacy laws, black codes is very important to this story. Um, First Black public library branch manager, Thomas Mountain Blue. We'll talk about him in a little bit, so I'm going to skip over him. The program, Hampton University, was the first HBCU library program. Not too many people know about that, so that's something that's very important. Rosenwald School and libraries, Dorothy Porter Wesley. How many people know about Dorothy Porter Wesley, right? Who was she? Well, you have to watch the documentary to find out. But if you know about Dewey Decimal System, and you're a cataloger, you probably know about Dorothy Porter. The read-ins and sit-ins in the libraries is very important. So, and the first library to have a sit-in, a lot of people probably would assume that it started in the 50s and 60s. No. First library read-in sit-in was in 1939 in Alexandria, Virginia. Yes. Yes. So we talk about that story in the documentary as well. All right. All right. Time for the second poll. When was the concept of the library as a community center developed? Was it the 1920s, the 1960s, the 1990s, 2000 and after?
Have another 30 seconds.
All right. All right. So we have 32% say the 1920s. Okay. 33% said 1960s. All right. All right. 1990s, 25%, and 2000 said 10% after. Okay, so great, 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 great. I think my next slide might answer this question for you guys. So also I did do a check on time. I am going to try to speed it up just a little bit. So I want to make sure that we definitely have time to have a conversation. So let me go ahead and go to my next slide. Thomas Fountain Blue. Well, guess what? Those 4 pages that you see there was what basically Thomas Fountain Blue took to American Library Association and says, this, my branches are a concept for using this as a community center, using the library as a community center in the 1920s, 1922. Well, actually, let's go ahead and click on this real quick so you guys can see. I want to make sure that you see where I got the information from because I'm a librarian by heart. I gotta show you the source, right? I can't just tell you about it and you not see the source. So let me go back here and let me bring up my screen. Here we go. All right. There you go. And so this wasn't the first paper. It was actually one that he wrote for the Library Conference at Hampton Institute. But he did some of the research that I actually have a book list at the end too. I did. I was like, I can't not have a book list for you guys, stuff to read. So, but yes, he did actually talk about this much earlier than 1927. But as you see, this is actually the 4 page paper, and you can find this on the Louisville Free Public Library Digital Archives. All right. Okay, so I'm going to try to speed this up. Sorry, guys. I know I can be long-winded when I'm talking about this subject. Okay. So back to the presentation. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so join us. We're doing web episodes. Our YouTube channel has a ton of our interviews, not with just because here's the thing with Black librarianship. It started with Black collectors. Because there were laws on the books that forbid Black people to read and write. So we did it anyway. We went out there and collected these books and these stories, and we read and we wrote. We did all this stuff anyway. So, Black collectors, Arturo Schomburg, you guys have probably heard that name. Uh, William C. Bolivar out of Philadelphia. There's a number of Black collectors. There are Black collectors to this day that are doing memory work and working with archives. So, we want to make sure that our YouTube channel kind of captures that sense. Like we're not just, you know, just because you have a library degree, we yes, you are a librarian, but there are other people out there that are very passionate about preserving Black history, telling Black history that might not have that degree. So we want to make sure that we capture their voices as well. Um, so the importance of preservation, I'm sorry, we want to make sure too, right? Because if when people, been many times you saw that map, um, Kennedy actually had to get on the phone and call like the local county or city and kind of like, well, this road, such and such, oh yeah, that doesn't exist anymore. Like there's no landmarker to tell you that a black segregated library was there. So there some libraries, some of them, and some of them are like I went up to Durham, North Carolina, was it on last Thursday, right? And of course, the colored library, as it used to be, is no longer there, but it's still there, right? They revamped it, they've moved it to a different place. So it has that sense of history, right? But not a lot of these Black segregated libraries don't, So another thing is, want to make sure that we have a holistic narrative of librarianship. When we talk about librarianship, I saw something out there that said, people sometimes talk about the bad stuff, but yeah, you got to talk about the good and the bad. I don't, I want to make sure that when I'm talking to my kids, one who's 14 and one who's 2, I want to make sure that they know the good stuff about the library. You can go in, you can have fun, you can explore the world, you can check out everything. But guess what? It did have a history with Black and segregated libraries. And that's as true as the other thing is true. So we got to make sure that we tell a holistic narrative. Representation is important. Um, just how libraries were used. Like, I think it's fascinating that how American history, any type of history, when we talk about America, you talk about civil rights and like I'm finding all this information about how libraries were crucial during that time, like being used for like court cases and sit-ins and like the Freedom Library, some of the libraries being bombed. I'm like, whoa, got all this information. You got all these stories about the role the public libraries and libraries played during the civil rights, but I don't see it reflected in the history books or in the museum sometimes. Yeah. So that kind of makes me, like making sure that we definitely tell this story about, Black librarianship and librarianship as a whole, you know. So yeah. I'm not going to play these two YouTube videos because want to make sure we have some time to talk. So please go out to our YouTube. Fighting for Students is a great one. She's out of South Carolina. Fighting White Supremacy with a Pen. That is a person up in Indianapolis is doing the Naptown Narratives, where he is not a librarian. He's a professor. I think I can't remember his title, but he's out of Butler, and he wanted to capture his story in his native home of Indianapolis, about people, everyday people. He just had that passion. What did I say about Black collectors? They just had that passion. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of recommend those two, but everything is great on there. I just, those are the some of the last two that we did, and I want to make sure that people kind of check them out. Um, Save the date for American Library Association Conference, June 27th. We will have our special screening, which is invitation only. Unfortunately, we have to make sure that, crowd size and make sure that we want to make sure that our sponsors and people who we've interviewed are able to see the first cut release. So now we are going to have some other screenings after that. We'll have a celebration party on that Saturday.
at my buddy Jamar Reming, who is now the PLA president. So he is hosting us. We're going to have a special guest. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you who it is. You're just going to have to wait and see. Panels and screenings. We'll do a panel discussion at the conference. We'll also do a abbreviated screening at BCALA meeting, and then we'll do a full screening at on Monday, June 30th at ALA. So that's that weekend. All right. Poetry, real quick. Where were the first Black History celebrations held? Public libraries, YMCA's, HBCUs, churches.
I'm going to cut this one a little bit short so we can have some
All right.
questions.
All right, 33% said public libraries. Okay. YMCA's was 4%, HBCU's was 12%, and 52% said churches. You know what? If I did not know this answer, that would have been the answer that I would have gone with. But it's actually HBCU libraries were the first ones to hold the first celebrations of Black History Month because what? HBCU libraries served a dual purpose. They served as public libraries and academic institutions when Black people can't go and use their own public library. So HBCU libraries, it started there. Okay. All right, here is my book list. I told you, I was like, look, I had a footnotes and I did this last minute, but I was like, I got to give them something. Like, and it actually, I got like 10 other resources that I could put on here, but it wouldn't fit. So I just wanted to go ahead and give you some resources that you guys can really go through, pick one of these books and just really go to town with. It's really good stuff. All right, we gonna be all right, just like Kendrick Lamar has said. Any questions? And also, please, the link tree has more news and our GoFundMe on there. And yeah, you can get a hold of me at Rodney Freeman at reminiscepreservation.com. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Rodney. This has been great. You've been getting lots of praise and accolades in the chat. We do have about 7 minutes left. So if anyone has questions, please put those in the chat. I did notice that someone just asked about the link tree and the book list. And we will be sharing these slides as well as the recording. Probably by the end of this week, if not by mid next week, it will be available on the Carteret webpage. But let's look at a couple of the questions I've come in so far. One, which you kind of already answered, but I figure you might have a more fleshed out response to it, is someone asked if you're interviewing and researching folks who have specifically gotten their MLIS or MLS, or folks who generally work in libraries.
So it just depends, right? Well, okay. So for the documentary, we really kind of we had a pool of I can't remember how many, but we kind of narrowed it down to people who kind of fit the themes. And not all, most of the people had their MLS. Some of them had their doctorates. But we did interview some people who, who were just general, had love for the library, or had some good library experience, and then depending on if it fit what we needed for the documentary, then yes. Now, for the YouTube channel, no, it's really people who are doing this memory work. You know, people who are doing memory work, librarians, Black archivists. We're interviewing all who were kind of in line with doing that memory work and keeping that Black history and telling the story. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great because you'd already kind of started mentioning some of like those other figures from like collectors to people who have worked in these spaces but don't technically have, like the professional degree. And I know there's a number of people in this chat. I know I'm one of these people who have seen a number of Black people working in libraries that are not technically librarians, but they're these symbols of inspiration, and wonderful signs of representation that have kept some of us going back to libraries and joining the ranks.
Yeah, and if I can just briefly say this, is like that was the stuff that we dug up about the story of Black librarianship, like how it was born out of this resistance to being told not to, right? And it was the precursors to Black librarians were Black collectors, literacy society. We don't even really get to talk about literacy societies, and what they really mean to Black librarianship, which, there's a lot of stuff. As much stuff as we put in, there was a lot of stuff that got left out, honestly, just because of time's sake. But, it left us with being able to do one-offs and tell those stories about Black literacy societies.
Yeah, I bet you guys have enough material to do like an extended series.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And some people had actually mentioned an extended director's cut when you were talking about trimming some time off the video.
Yeah.
So you've got
Yeah.
interested viewers.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Uh, so another question that came in was someone would like for you to repeat the name of the gentleman that was in the clip who talked about E.J. Josie.
Oh yeah. And I might get his name wrong, his last name, Dr. Wayne Wigan or Wayne Wigan. I'm sorry if I did mispronounce his name. But his book was actually on the book list right here. This is the first one up here, The Desegregation of Public Libraries in the Jim Crow South. So that is, you can see, I use that heavily. I, I think I purchased almost all of these books, and like if you go through all of them, you'll see like me just marking it up and like writing notes on the side. So, but yeah, so I do apologize if I mispronounce his name.
We also have a question from someone who wanted to know who or what institutions did you visit in Georgia for footage?
Um, so we actually only went to Georgia Tech to do some interviewing. We have requested footage, and I've been in conversation with Auburn Avenue Research Library. We've actually requested several pieces of footage from them. Um, but it's interesting because when I was down there for something else, I went to the Museum of Civil Rights and Human Rights, the one that's like
Mm,
right next to the Coca-Cola.
yeah.
And I was in there, and this is actually what really inspired me to like really, I think this might have been before I started this and everything, or like I was in the processing phase of like how I was going to get this thing started. And I was down in Atlanta, and I went to that museum, and I saw that they had Dr. King's papers on display, and I read the press release for the March on Washington. And at the bottom, it says, "We need these institutions desegregated now." And it said, parks and then public libraries. I was like, oh,
Mm.
snap, public libraries. It was on Dr. King's radar all this time. And the story with E.J. Josie. So I don't want to give anything away about the documentary, but there's a connection between E.J. Josie and Dr. Martin Luther King. So that's all I got to say
Ooh.
about that.
I feel like you're really drumming up this interest. You're gonna get the people viewing it, whether they're going to ALA or one of these showings later, it's gonna happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I know I could spend easily another hour here chatting with you, asking questions, and I know that our attendees probably could as well, but unfortunately we have reached 3 p.m. So we are going to wrap up for today. But I do want to thank all of you so much for those who are attending. This session is being recorded. I will wrap up the recording in just a moment, and it will be available on our website within a week or so. And you should receive an email tomorrow with a link to a PDF attendance certificate for viewing today's webinar. And if you would like to support the Carteret Series webinars, please consider donating to our sponsor, the Georgia Library Association. And thank you again, Rodney, for joining us today. It's been such a pleasure having you.
Oh, thank you. And thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys.
All right, everybody have a great day.
Rodney, if you could